morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today once again. I'm sure most of the people on the call we've interacted before, but as they mentioned, my name is Esther Kasirye. I'm a financial literacy coach and a former seasoned banker. I was in banking, commercial banking for over 20 years, but now I'm in that space post banking. But as Paul has mentioned, this is a very pertinent topic at this time, knowing all that we're going through. And I think it's really a great honor for me to share my thoughts with you and also listen to people's experiences, suggestions, because as Paul said, we all learn together, we all win together. So if you would allow me, I'll proceed straight into the presentation. And bear with me if I go a little bit fast, because we've lost over 10 minutes. And yet, as Jolly said, there's business and the deals that you have, which you need to wrap up today. So I'll go off camera and focus on our presentation. Okay. This is the program tentatively. We've done the introductions in about 5 minutes. I'm going to present for about 30 minutes or less, and then we will open the floor for a question and answer session. And then after which we shall hand back to our hosts for closing remarks. I hope this works for you. When I saw this topic, leveraging, as a banker, I understand from a banking context, leveraging as another word. And indeed, this word has different meanings depending on the context. In business, finance, or banking, when we talk about leveraging, we're talking about people pledging their assets against which they lent funds. So when you've got a leverage situation, it means you're using borrowed funds, which you've invested into your project and making money. In leadership, when people talk about leveraging, usually they're referring to their ability to influence people and get things done. However, in a personal context, which I believe is a context we're going to use this word in, it refers to when you use something that you have in order to maximize benefit or to gain make the best of a situation that you're facing in. Right now, we're in a situation of extremely rapidly rising costs. Cost of living is going up. So the question is, how do we then leverage? How do we use the income, the funds that we have to make sure that we get the most out of our shillings, our hard-earned money? And I'll begin by emphasizing this. Yes, earning money is very, very important, but you have to be able to earn it and keep most of it, even after you have spent to meet your bills, your expenses, and other obligations. Because why we're even talking about this is given the rapidly rising prices, we're finding ourselves in a situation whereby we're spending so much. We're spending so much yet getting the same amount of products or services or even less. And it's squeezing us. So many times we're finding ourselves in a situation. I saw a webinar where Robert Kawushenga, former CEO of New Vision was, and he said that basically, let's not talk in big words. The fact is we're all facing brokenness. We are broke. We are struggling to keep up with this situation of very, very rapidly rising prices. Personally, I brace myself whenever I drive out and I have to go to a fueling station because it's shocking. Every time I'm at a fueling station, the price has gone up by about 100 shillings. It doesn't sound much, but when you look where we were several months ago and where we are today, who would have believed we'd go over 1,000 shillings higher than the price? I remember when we hit the 5,000 mark, everybody was stunned and saying, we're at 5,000, and now we are heading for 6,000, and who knows where we'll end up. So it's critical for us to see how to manage our cash, our income, so that we are not living in a state of permanent brokenness. And that is why we need to think carefully how we use our money. Being broke, as much as we learn, we talk about it, it's not a good place to be. Because if you fail to manage your cash flow, which is your income, whatever money is flowing in, your payday becomes gives you a very short exuberance. You know that common saying where we say the situation I'm in, there's more month than money, whereby you're paid and within a week, even 10 days or less of your payday, because you have to pay for a lot of things, pay more money, you find yourself broke. So you have to another 20 or so days to get through before the next paycheck. So you need to think about, how can I handle my money so I'm not always in this situation of I just have few days and then after that it's just brokenness throughout. And then because if you fail to again handle this situation, you find yourself stopping to save. In fact, people will be surprised, why am I still talking about saving at this time? Guys, the world has not ended. We still have a future. And that future, we can only prepare for it if we save and invest. So as much as things are tough, we have to manage our cash income in a way that we continue to save. If you find yourself dipping into your emergency funds just to get by, you are in a very precarious situation because emergencies are not going to go away. Things are still going to happen and you still need that emergency fund. If the only way you can get through a month is by borrowing from colleagues, family, you even go to money lenders, which is quite tough, but sometimes you feel that that's the only way out, then you're even putting yourself in a tighter cash flow situation because we all know what money lenders are. They take no prisoners, so to speak. And then sometimes out of desperation, you find yourself having to sell your things which are precious to you. Imagine when things get very tight, I've got an example, I hate to use this, but there's somebody who works for me. Every month I see him with a different phone. And that phone, he has it at the beginning of the month. What happens? Things get very tight. Before mid of the month, he sells his phone. He sells his phone, and then for the rest of the month, it's hard communicating. He doesn't have a phone. I pay him, he buys another cheap phone, probably secondhand. Within a few days, the phone is gone. So it's frustrating when you put in that situation where you have to sell. And I'm sure he sells these phones for very ridiculous amounts of money. But because he's tight, he's broke. Yeah. And because of this being broke, you find yourself constantly thinking about money. You have sleepless nights. Constantly, you're anxious. And this is not good, especially in a topic that is very common these days, our mental health. Being in a state of anxiety, stress is not good for us because ultimately it hits our work, our ability to work and be productive at work. And as performance dips, we all know those tough conversations we'll have with our managers. Another thing is when finances are tight, it creates tension in the home whereby, of course, as if you're the main breadwinner, you look at everyone as being extravagant. People don't understand why daddy, mommy suddenly makes such a big deal if I add an extra teaspoon in sugar. Why, when I ask for this, suddenly people blow up and shout at me. So a lot of domestic tension is created when our finances are tight. So what can we do to make sure we don't end up in this situation? First of all, we need to recognize that this is the situation that we're in. And this is the situation that's forcing us to be very mindful about how we manage our incomes. We all know that since the beginning of this year, in some cases earlier, prices of nearly all essential commodities have gone up. I've talked about the fuel prices, the impact on transport fares. And you find that because of the higher cost of transport, now even things produced, you'd ask yourself, okay, prices are going up, but why is my matoke bunch going higher? Why do I have to pay more for a kilo of meat? And it's simply because the person who's your supplier thinks that they're spending more on bringing the goods to market. Schools opened in January, we're very excited. What happened? For nearly all the schools, school fees went up. Of late, we've noticed that the Uganda shilling that was stable against the dollar throughout the lockdown period, suddenly the graph is going up. As a Minister of Finance says, it's going upwards. I thought it was when it was at 3,600, it was bad, 3,700 and going. And this increment has an implication for imported goods, especially things like fuel. We got our salary increments in March. Or I believe at least most banks get our increments in March. But do we even still feel the impact with what is happening? So you can see that commodity prices, regardless of where you shop, they have gone up. And so that is the reality that is forcing us to think twice. But if it's any consolation, there's someone who, there's a famous saying that there's misery in numbers. It's knowing that it's not just us in Uganda who are going through this. On the screen under Bangladesh, you can see how miserable people were in Bangladesh during Ramadan, because suddenly, of course, in Ramadan, once you break your fast, you want to be able to eat well. But people could not eat as well as they did because the staples like rice, the prices were crazy. In the European Union, you can see, we always think that when things are happening, it's just happening to us. But look at the European Union, cost of meat has gone up, cost of sugar has gone up, milk, eggs, bread, cereal, and they're also having fuel cost increases. So this is a problem that's not happening to us. It's very easy to get caught up and say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Why can't our MP, our minister, who do something against it? But it's important to keep things into perspective. The quotation I have here is from the lady. This lady called Kanzadana is the spokesperson of, I think, the president of Kenya. She's the official spokesperson. And she makes that comment that rising cost of living is not exclusive to Kenya. And I can change that. It's not exclusive to Uganda. This is a global phenomenon. It's happening due to external factors which are beyond our control. And the most pertinent one is the war that's taking place in Ukraine. So it's driving up prices. So as much as we hold our leaders, our representatives accountable, there's the economic crises that are going on around us. And it's important for me to say this because we need to keep in mind that that this situation, it's bigger than just us in Uganda. It is something that has been fueled by the war around us. We've seen the impact of global warming. You heard about the flooding in South Africa. South Africa is one of the places where we receive products from. Because of this war, you all know Ukraine and Russia, great producers of gas and fuel. They're also the leading exporters of wheat. So is India, which is going through a drought. They're also, I didn't know that the biggest grower of sunflower, which is used in cooking oil, Ukraine. A lot of IT components are produced in Ukraine. So generally there's jittery in the world markets, and part of this panic is what's causing prices of things to go up. Yes, I think Russia is still pumping gas, but because people are scared that they might stop because of the sanctions, so that is leading to a global stock market crash. We all know that we're out of lockdown here, but China is in and out of it. And we all know that China, especially the city of Shanghai, is the factory of the world, as they call it. So to sum it up, it's what they call a perfect storm. So many crises happening at the same time, and they're leading to the situation that we're facing in. And to make it worse is we don't control the situation, so we don't know when it's going to end. So you can't say like, okay, I'll bear with this for a few months because tomorrow things will be good. The situation has implications for Uganda. These external global shocks. And because of that global supply, a lot of components manufacturers aren't able to produce. Our factories that have just started are not getting a lot of the inputs. The war is definitely going to lead those shortages. So there's high demand for a lot of the products. And so exporters, like people, rather importers, people who bring in fuel, they're having to spend more dollars to get the same amount of fuel. And those are the high demand is what's driving up commodity prices. Not going to change. Fuel is where it is. Transportation cost is crazy. Even local produce, I've mentioned, some of it is due to seasonality. A few weeks ago, I died of shock. And when I went to the market and I was being sold 3 tomatoes for 1,000 shillings, I said, absolutely not. But there was a shortage at the time. The person I buy from told me, usually I buy a box of tomatoes for 300,000. Now I'm buying it for close to $1 million. So all those are going to be passed to us. And as long as we're in this inflationary situation, the value of our pay, your paycheck, the amount you earn every month is the same going into your bank account, but you can get less and less for it. So what can we do to make sure that we manage to survive through the situation and not be broke all the time? These steps look very simple, but I would take a deep dive. Definitely you have to now look holistically at all your income, not just the salary that comes from DFC. Beyond that, where can you get a little bit of income? which has been coming through, and maybe you could ignore it, but now times are tough, you have to look at it. Then look at your budget. How are you spending? Where is your money going, right? You need to know what money is coming in, where is it going? Is it enough, or there's a shortage, which means you're broke all the time, or you have a little surplus that you can use maybe to generate more income. So the key question, and this is where the rubber hits the road, this is on step 4. How do you decide to deal with the deficit? How do we deal with the deficit? Because many of us are facing that situation where times are tough. And once you've figured out how to deal with the deficit this month, there's no guarantee that next month it will be fine, because prices are still going up. So if you've worked out in your budget that I'll be buying so many liters of fuel at 6,000 bob, we might find ourselves at 7,000 by beginning of July. So that's why we constantly have to review. So let me take a deep dive into each of these steps. When I say review your income holistically, most of us, when we think about our income, for whatever reason, we zero in on our salary after all the deductions have gone off, our loans, statutory and everything, and maybe contribution to pension funds. But we do get benefits and allowances. Okay, they don't come in cash and kind, but I know, like when I was in banking, I used to get airtime. It was airtime, which in a way, there was no way my employer was going to track that if I put for you 50 or 100,000 worth of airtime on the phone, you are strictly going to use it for what? You're strictly going to use it to make office calls. So because I knew that, I learned how to balance in a way that I could use that airtime to get me through the month without me having to top up. So let's think about things like that. We have little investments here and there, be it a fixed deposit, be it a saving account, maybe you've got a unit trust, you've got a rental unit, you've got a little piece of land which they use as banking, for maybe people night parking. There's income coming from that. We all have little things we're doing. Maybe you're doing what they call urban farming. You've got a little side hustle that you do, you sell things on the side. All this money, you need to sit down and now think realistically. Over and above the salary I'm getting from DFCU, where else can I squeeze in a little bit of money? Yeah, where can I squeeze in a little bit of money? I know it's not easy. Most people, when you say review your income, they say, okay, maybe DFCU is going to feel that times are hard, so they will consider giving us a mid-year increment. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So you have to work with what you have. Remember, leveraging, maximize what you have for the benefit. And then you look at your expenditure. We have a lot of expenditures. I know you've had financial literacy talks and where you've talked about needs and wants. Needs are things that you need, basic things that you need to exist. You need to have a roof over your head. You need to eat. You need to dress. You need to move around. If you have children, they have to go to school. They have to go into daycare. If you fall sick, you have to get treatment. Then there are things that we have to take care of. We have to have insurance. And life, we have to, even in these challenging times, we'd like to think we can get a little entertainment. We watch TV. Some people can afford a Netflix. Some of us stop at Go TV. Others, you go out with your friends. You have your personal care. You go to the salon. You go to the barber. You have your manicure, pedicure. All these are things that we're spending money on. Can you sit down and actually work out how much of your pay, how much of your income from your salary and others is going to which item? Because you need now to be very clear. This is the money I get, and this is the thing that these are the things that I'm spending my money on every month. Right now where we are, you can't afford unplanned expenditure. I remember in happier days, I'd walk around town, you see these guys who are walking around with things, you're stuck in traffic, someone comes, grapes, you say, bring grapes. And because now I know I have a strict budget, I cannot afford that 10,000 for grapes anymore. Somebody brings the latest sunglasses. As much as the sun is bearing down, I put down the visor or use my hands. So this impulsive shopping, we have to move away from that. Right now, we need to be very clear what is something we can't do without and what are things we can postpone. I'll take a little dive into that. Yeah, but critical thing is we need to start off by looking currently where I am. my take-home pay, I'm just pulling a figure from the sky, is 2 million shillings. Out of the 2 million shillings that I'm earning, when I add up my expenses, what figure do I get? If I end up with 2.3 million, right? Which means the 300,000, either I'm getting things on credit from Kaduka, or I ask somebody to give me short-term loan, which basically means I'm in a negative situation. Red light warning. I am spending more than I'm earning. Bad place to be. And many of us have teetering on that, but we should not be there, because that's what's going to cause us financial distress. Then if what I'm earning 2 million a month, and I'm also spending 2 million, exactly, it means, okay, I'm just balancing the books. As we use in our Ugandan slang, the boat is just balancing, but we still have to save for that rainy day. So ideally, we should be in a situation where we have a little surplus that goes into savings, that goes into emergency, or even most importantly, we can use that money to build a little bit of capital that will enable us to go into side hustle. People might think I'm even mad to talk about savings, but now we are in that area they call tightening your belt. Tightening your belt. As they say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So now we are in a tough situation. We have to change the way we think. Those days of splurging and living anyhow are gone. So we have to find a practical way of how we're going to deal if we find ourselves in a situation where we are having a deficit. There are usually two options. You're either going to increase your income or you're going to reduce expenses. And I'll tell you this one straight away. The harder option is increasing your income. It's very, very hard. Like I've said, the DFCU are not going to give you a mid-year salary increment. And you really have to think hard. How can I bring in extra money? I'm going to take you through these options. First of all, if you look around your home, if you look around critically, we have so much stuff that we have bought and kept. We're accumulators. We live in a consumer society. But many of the things that we have in our houses, we don't use. Some of us are working on 2 or 3 phones, right? Do we need 2 or 3 phones at the moment? So the quickest way, if you find yourself in a tough situation, is to sell off the stuff that you no longer need. And right now it's being made easier. I'm sure you've all heard of websites like Gigi. People go there. I mean, from time to time I used to have, like, let's say, the dinner sets I have, you go, people give you glasses, they give you this. You find yourself with a lot of things you've never touched, even clothes, which are literally still new, shoes that are still new, and you have not worn them for over a year. Why not post those things on Gigi and sell them off? At least it will give you some liquidity too, which you can then use to buy the things that you actually need. And this is a once-off because you won't have things to sell every month. But if you want to look for a way to increase your income occasionally, then you should be looking at things like maybe, let's say, fees. Like for many of us, school fees when schools opened was higher. So that was an unexpected situation. That's when you take a salary, a short-term loan or salary advance, or loans if you have them at work, just to pass by that situation. But that's a once-off. Don't go and start taking loans regularly. That's why I'm using the word occasionally. Don't start taking loans regularly in order to get by. It is not sustainable. You'll end up in a bigger hole. But to get ongoing relief, you should think of getting either something part-time you can do. You argue that I work for what? I work for DFCU and I'm in the office from 8 up to 5 p.m. or even 6 p.m. How could I possibly get another job? Guys, we live in an economy which has gone virtual. There are lots of people who are doing things on the side that don't disrupt their work. I know of people who are doing online jobs, right? In the evening. You can go and you can be an online office assistant in another time. You don't have restricted hours. You can be, other people are influencers, they record themselves. I'm not so sure whether DFC would be happy to see its employees there, but there are things that you can do, or even teaching. There are lots of colleges whereby you can take a part-time job teaching at the weekend. There are lots of weekend courses or evening classes. You can teach that. The harder one is to say that I will seek a promotion. Let me work so hard. If I understand the corporate structure, the way it works, it's a pyramid. There are fewer jobs at the top. So you can seek to get a promotion, but it may not be so easy. In the longest term, if you really feel that DFC is not going to cut it for me, then you may need to think in the long term that, okay, in a few years' time, or if things aren't improving, I may need to look for another employer. That is not something I would wish on anyone, because like I said, we'd like to make do with what we have. So the key thing, if you're in this situation and you're still managing to save, guys, think of investing that money. Don't think of, okay, now because I've saved, now it can mean we can go back to having takeaway every day. Right now, luxuries are off the table. We are living simple and basic lives, right? So increasing your income may not be so easy, but it is easier. It's more in our control to reduce our expenses. First of all, like I've said, you need to categorize your expenditure. Is this a need? Having a roof over your head is a need. Having DSTV is a want. You can do without DSTV and you will not die. Some of us have Wi-Fi in the house. Doing away with Wi-Fi for a few months is a want. You know, you can hotspot off your phone if you have to do things on your computer. You don't have to take this Wi-Fi, which runs whether it's being used or not. And obligations, things like loans, things like insurance policies, they're things that you cannot put off. Paying school fees for your kid is an obligation. So those things we have to make sure that we prioritize the obligations, then we take care of the needs, and wants are bottom on the list. So when you're reducing expenses, think about what is it that I can conserve? Like I have to keep on buying food, but how can I buy it cheaply? Yeah. If we have been using, let's say we've been buying 3 kilos or 5 kilos of meat a week, now we're going to go down. Let me use on the higher. We've been using 5 kilos to get out of the meat. Now we have to introduce some cheaper alternatives. We'll eat more beans, vinyebwa, ishabwe, and other vegetables. Yeah. So meat might become from every single day, it's 3 or 4 days a week, or 2 or even 1. Yeah. We still have to eat, but let us eat cheaper. Let us use less of the things that we can. I'm living in this area. Rent now has become a strain. Let me consider maybe moving to another neighborhood where rent is cheaper. And then let's think about what we can adjust and renegotiate. You cannot renegotiate your insurance policy. What you're committed to, you can. But when it gets to things like loans, if things are really tight, can you talk to you, if it's a loan from your employer, can you renegotiate your repayment period so it gives you a bit of relief, right? If you've got a house help or someone working for you, things are tight. Maybe some people have even 2. So you can talk to them and say, I want to keep both of you, but I may have to pay you slightly less. The little money I used to give you when you're going up country to visit mama, that one is gone. We have what they call blood tax, which we give to our extended families. You can either reduce the support you're giving them or renegotiate and say, guys, things are tight. I can no longer do things the way I can. And then there are things we'll have to eliminate. We do not have to have new clothes every month. We do not have to buy new shoes. We do not always have to go out. We do not have to. There are a lot of things. Those are the wants. We can either do without them or do them differently. So bottom line is, whatever is happening to us, our first priority is we must clear obligations, because missing a loan payment or insurance policy is trouble. Yet, if I miss this week, we haven't eaten meat, we haven't eaten rice, we're just doing ugali kano and some binyebwa. Yes, it will be tight, but we'll get through it. It will not kill us. It will not kill us. But definitely missing a loan installment. I know a lot of people, they get paid and they know that the installment, when paid on the 24th or 25th, the installment will go through at night. As soon as the money hits my account, I withdraw it all. So when the standing order comes through, there is nothing. Guys, don't do that. Don't do that, because in the end, it will come back to bite you. Then here are some tips I might have for reducing costs. Definitely on non-essential, those ones. Things like going to the salon, having a pedicure, doing my nails. The people are known as fashionistas. They always have new clothes. Now is the time to cut back. If you can wash your hair, blow dry it and set it at home, instead of going to a fancy salon, get the girl to come and do your hair at home. Yeah, those are some of the things that we want them, but they're not essential. We will not die simply because I did not go to the salon this month. Let us find a way of doing them. And then for the needs, we have to make some tough choices. If it is no longer sustainable for me to live in Kira and I have to move to Buloba, so be it. Now it's a time. I have a friend of mine, he left employment and he started a company. He used to live in Muyenga in his own house. But then when things got tough, he had a house which he had bought when he was just starting off, a smaller house in Chireka. He moved the family to Chireka. The kids were going to school in Green Hill, but they moved to Chireka and he rented out his house in Muyenga to supplement his income. That was very painful because now kids had to be woken up almost at 4:30 at 5 to beat the traffic of Ginger Road to be in Green Hill by 6. These are tough times. We have to make those sort of decisions. Carpooling. I have a car and my husband has a car. We're all going to town. We even see each other and wave at each other in traffic. Those days are gone. Let us use one car. We live in the neighborhood. We all work for DFCU. We all know we are coming to town. We're coming to head office, or we're going to a branch. Why does everyone drive their car? We can take turns. Say Monday we use X's car, Tuesday we use X's car. And maybe if our kids are going to the same school, one person will take the kids to school this week, then another person will take. So we kind of share the cost of keeping on using our cars. And if things are really so bad, and some parents have had to make this call, we have to think of, maybe we have to move our kids to cheaper schools. I see a lot of people with kids in international schools. I have a kid in international school. This is my last born. And it's just because she's so late, she's almost completing. But when you think of the fees, I said, honestly, if I could put you back in your neighbor, I'd take you like yesterday. But she's gone so far. So it means a lot of things. We used to have trips and going on holiday and doing this. So I say, okay, now going for a holiday abroad or paying your school fees, which one shall we do? So we all agree you want to continue going to school. So going holidays abroad, done, forgotten. Going out for takeout, family dues, dinners out, we've gone to Java's, gone, forgotten. We buy, if we must buy something and do our takeaway at home, right? People have cars. You're going to leave them parked at home and use public transport because that's the only way you'll get into the farm. I do a bit of urban farming. I've got a bit of a compound. Even if you don't have a big compound, we all know how to, these bottles of mineral water, those big ones, that water. You turn it into a little bit of garden, you can plant tomatoes there. I think I was very upset when I was buying tomatoes very expensively because early in the year, I had planted my tomatoes from December. Like the first 3 months of this year, I was not buying tomatoes. I was not buying spinach. I was not buying sukuma. All of those I'd go and pick from my garden. Even in Tula, all of those go in my garden. I don't buy in Dagala. I planted a few we took in my compound. So let us think about things that are going to lighten our load. And if you have to shop groceries, which we do, for the first time, it may not be, we like the supermarket because you go to you buy your vegetables, you buy your milks, you buy your what, you buy your cleaning materials, detergents, everything under one roof. But guys, you may not believe it. Sometimes supermarkets are actually expensive. In fact, the worst shops are those convenience shops at fueling stations. I always shudder when you see someone going with a shopping basket, buying milk and buying what. If you buy a bottle of Pepsi or Fanta or whatever from that shop, you'll pay 5,000 for this, is it 300 mils bottle? Yet at the supermarket, you'll still get it at 200. If you buy it from a distributor, you might even get it at 1.8. So now we have to start making choices about where we buy. Some of us like buying things on a daily, weekly basis. I buy my sugar a little bit as I'm going home. But if you ever add up, you're spending a little bit more. If you are in a position where you get paid, it might not be you alone, but let's say we have 5 of us living in the neighborhood. Why don't we organize? And these days people deliver. We buy a sack of sugar from Chikovo, right? A 50-kilogram bag and we share it. The price of a wholesale bag of sugar is definitely buying than 1 kilo, 2 kilos. Yeah, same thing with things like cooking oils. Staples like rice, sugar, flour. Let us look whether we can buy at wholesale in bulk for either ourselves if the liquidity is there. If it's not, let's see who we can get together with and we buy these things. And then we need to postpone purchase of new items, or if we must buy them, let us buy them in installments. I'll give you an example. It's always been my experience, and for a reason that if I drive a car for more than 5 years, after year 5, I'm constantly doing repairs. So it has been my habit that after 5 years, I sell and buy a new one. But guys won't believe it, I'm driving my car for year 7. Year 7, because I've reached a point where I know I can no longer do that. I plan to buy a new car this year, but prices have gone up. So that one I'm postponing. In other cases, you have to pay for things. If there's something you've committed to buy, if you can negotiate to pay it in installments. If your cooker is spoiled and you've got someone who can supply you with a new one because it's on its last legs, can you pay for it in 3 or 4 or over a year? Yeah. So that is how we're going to manage. It doesn't take away the cost, but it frees your strain on cash flow. And then some of the things, let's consider repairing them instead of replacing them. The heel of your shoe comes off. It's just become unglued. You can actually take it to the fundi down the road. The guy will put a glue and a few stitches, and you can actually wear that pair of shoes a little longer. Or the red tip, for us ladies who wear kakondo, the tip has come off. Instead of saying, that shoe now, I'll put it in the rubbish. You can go downtown, they'll put a new heel for you, and no one will be the wiser that you're now repairing things. We have to be a bit more mindful of how we spend our money. And then one thing that will help us to be able to review our expenses. Right now, if you're operating without a budget, you're done. And most time when you talk about budgets, people think these complicated spreadsheets. You can do something as simple as the sheet of paper. Then you can write it down. I know my income, I've got my paycheck, 1 for me, paycheck number 2 is the wife. If you have a side hustle, maybe we're selling eggs, we're doing this. We've got a car, we've put in Uber, we've got something, add that income. This is the total income that we expect to receive this month. If we have a mortgage, we have to pay. We pay for electricity, gas, water, utilities, phones. And then if you have loans, you're servicing and fuel, that goes to it. Think about church. Are you still paying your tithe? I see this person is so bad. In the budget, they have removed tithe. Maybe these were the days of lockdown when they were no longer going to church. And then look at the non-essentials, going out to eat in a restaurant, buying new clothes. I've talked about these personal care. You should be aware of what you spend on them. But once you've added your total expenses and your total income and you deduct, if you are at negative, then where you start eliminating is the non-essentials. Tick those ones, crossing this month, no restaurant, no new clothes. Because some people say, like even me, I have a clothing budget for every month. But the reality is I buy clothes like once in 6 months. I just managed to make do with what I have, right? So once you've done that, you've created your simple diet, track on how much you're spending. And people say it's very hard. It's very easy to go and buy a diary. At the end of every day, I do it. It frustrates me. Sometimes I'm angry with myself, but I've disciplined myself. At the end of the day, if I bought a newspaper, I'll put 2,000. I stopped to buy bread and milk, I spent 7,000. I write on a daily basis. Once I put the activities, of course, I use my diary to plan, to organize my day, what I'm going to do. But then at the bottom, I have a section on expenditure of the day. So sometimes people do that and they total at the end of the month. I tend to total on a weekly basis. I know how much went on to food, electricity. I've paid this week, it's for the month. Gas, manda, charcoal, everything. You total it. So at the end of the month, you actually know what it is that you have spent. Then you go against the same budget. In this last empty column, put actual. And that starts saying against paycheck, probably salary did not change. And then mortgage, that's a fixed one. Electricity, use pretty much the same. Gas, the same. For most of your utilities. And of course, somebody's mentioned their apps. Yes, you could use the apps if they're there. But for many people, the moment you say budget, software, templates, they go crazy. So some people, the easiest way to start, get a notebook and do this. So you fill in your actual amounts, know that this is what I planned and this is what I actually spent. So where's the variance? Where did I spend more? And why did I spend more? Is it a once-off? Is it something that has come in permanently? And how will I then cope with it? How will I adjust? What do I have to take out? This is how we are going to manage to get through this time. Because the reality is we're living in inflationary times. That is what it's called. Inflation has hit us. And it's not just here. You hear that countries in America, this is the highest inflation they've had in 40 years. So guys, this situation is not going away quickly. So I'd like us to conclude by telling you that the inflation in Uganda, unfortunately, it is not being controlled by the government of Uganda. It is beyond the government of Uganda. It is a global phenomenon that has put us where we are. And because of that, the real value of our income is decreasing. So we have to become frugal. We have to change our lifestyles. We have to cut back on expenditure because it's easier than increasing our income. You have to learn to live on a budget, have a spending plan that lets you know Do I still have more to spend? Can I afford this? You know? And then if it's any consolation, I think people took offense, and hence the name the Mwogo, the cassava economy. The reality, what our president was pointing out, that actually the prices of local produce are going up slower than imported goods, because the cassava has gone up, but it's definitely not anywhere near flour. The flour has gone up, which means biscuits and cakes are more expensive. So why not have some lumonde with your tea? My kids, I've got them use afternoon tea, they eat boiled maize instead of wanting cookies. That is the reality. And I've concluded by saying, when tough times will not last, in a year or so, situation might be better, but we have to be tough. We have to make those tough choices in order to survive. I'm sorry, I have very limited time. I've tried to go through as quickly as I can. There you are. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you so much for listening to me.